Learn English through story. The edge of temptation. Emily Hart had always lived a life dictated by rules and expectations. From a young age, she had been molded into a model daughter, a dutiful student, and later, a dedicated employee. Raised in a conservative household, her parents instilled in her a strict moral code that left little room for deviation. Now, at 35, Emily found herself in a monotonous routine, working as an accountant at a prestigious firm, where her days were consumed by numbers and deadlines. Yet, as she sat in her gray cubicle, she couldn't shake the feeling that life was passing her by, and that there was more to experience beyond the confines of her well-ordered world. One gray Wednesday afternoon, while sorting through a mountain of paperwork, Emily stumbled across an invitation tucked between the files. It was for an exclusive gallery opening downtown, showcasing the work of a controversial artist named Julian Cade. Julian was known for his provocative pieces that challenged societal norms, often blurring the lines between art and sensuality. His exhibitions attracted a certain crowd, those looking to indulge in the avant-garde and the taboo. A mix of curiosity and apprehension washed over Emily. She had heard whispers about Julian's work, his bold use of color, his daring subject matter, and the allure that surrounded him. While her conservative upbringing had taught her to be cautious, there was a part of her that longed to explore the unknown, to dip her toes into the waters of temptation. In that moment, a flicker of rebellion ignited within her, urging her to take a leap into a world she had always avoided. That evening, after work, Emily found herself standing in front of the gallery's entrance, her heart racing. The building was unassuming from the outside, but inside, it pulsated with energy. The soft murmur of conversations blended with the clinking of glasses and the rhythmic thrum of music. As she stepped inside, she felt a wave of warmth wash over her, mingled with the scent of paint and creativity. She was instantly enveloped in a world that felt foreign, yet exhilarating. The gallery was alive with people, each one more eclectic than the last. Artists, critics, and curious souls mingled, discussing the pieces on display with fervor. As Emily wandered through the gallery, her gaze was drawn to a large canvas at the center of the room. It was a striking piece, filled with vivid colors and abstract shapes that seemed to dance across the surface. But it was the central figure that captivated her, an ethereal woman. Her form, both powerful and vulnerable, radiating a raw energy that spoke to Emily's soul. Suddenly, a voice broke through her reverie. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Startled, Emily turned to find a tall man with tousled dark hair and piercing green eyes standing beside her. He wore a tailored suit that accentuated his lean physique, and an air of confidence surrounded him. It was Julian Cade himself. "Yes," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's mesmerizing." Julian's smile was charming, a blend of mischief and intrigue. "I'm glad you think so. It's one of my favorites. I aim to provoke thought and elicit emotion. Art should stir something deep within us." As they stood side by side, observing the painting, Emily felt a magnetic pull toward him. There was an undeniable chemistry in the air, an unspoken connection that sent shivers down her spine. "What inspired this piece?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Julian turned to her, his gaze intense. "It's about embracing our desires, about the struggle between societal expectations and personal freedom. We often cage ourselves in fear, never daring to explore the edges of our temptation." His words resonated with her, echoing the internal conflict she had felt for so long. "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I've always followed the rules, never stepping outside the lines. But lately, I've felt this urge to break free." Julian raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Then perhaps this is your moment. Temptation can be a powerful teacher if we allow it to guide us." As the evening unfolded, Julian and Emily engaged in deep conversation, sharing their thoughts on art, life, and the limitations they imposed on themselves. For the first time in years, Emily felt seen and understood. Julian's passion for life ignited something within her aflame that had been dimmed by routine and convention. After a few glasses of wine, Emily found herself feeling bolder. As the night wore on, she realized how drawn she was to Julian, not just as an artist, but as a person. His charisma was intoxicating, and his presence enveloped her like a warm embrace. Before she knew it, they were standing closer than before, their chemistry palpable. "Would you like to see my studio?" Julian asked, his voice low and inviting. The offer hung in the air, a tempting possibility that sent a rush of adrenaline through Emily. Part of her screamed to resist, to remember her commitments and the life she had built. But the other part, a part she had suppressed for too long, urged her to say yes. Yes, she breathed, surprising herself with her willingness to step into the unknown. The studio was just a few blocks away, a converted loft filled with canvases, paint splatters, and the remnants of Julian's creative genius. As they entered, Julian flipped on the lights, illuminating the space filled with unfinished pieces and vibrant colors. The energy was electric, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of her office. "Welcome to my world," Julian said, a hint of pride in his voice. He gestured around, showcasing his creations. "This is where the magic happens." Emily wandered through the studio, feeling like a child in a candy store. The walls were adorned with provocative art, each piece telling a story that resonated with her own hidden desires. "It's incredible," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You have such a gift." Julian stepped closer, his body heat radiating against her skin. "It's not just about the art, it's about the feelings behind it. I create to express the things we often keep buried, the fears, the passions, the wildness within us." Emily felt her heart race as Julian's gaze locked onto hers, intense and searching. It was a gaze that seemed to see into her very soul, laying bare the thoughts and emotions she had hidden for so long. "What about you, Emily? What do you desire?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. What did she desire? The answer was elusive, wrapped in layers of fear and doubt. But standing in Julian's presence, surrounded by his art, she felt a longing to break free from her constraints. I want to be free," she finally admitted, her voice trembling. "Free from expectations, from the life I've built that feels so suffocating." "Then let's explore that freedom together," Julian suggested, his voice smooth as silk. "Temptation can lead to discovery. It can show us who we truly are." As he spoke, he stepped closer, his body just inches from hers. Emily could feel the heat radiating off him, a magnetic pull that threatened to consume her. She knew she was on the edge of something dangerous, yet exhilarating. This was a moment of choice, a decision that could change the course of her life. With her heart pounding, she took a step back. "I can't. I have a life, a job, responsibilities." The words felt hollow, a weak defense against the desire swelling within her. Julian tilted his head, his expression understanding yet unwavering. "But what if this is your chance to embrace something new? Life is too short to live in fear of temptation." The conflict raged inside her. Part of her wanted to turn and flee, to return to the safety of her predictable life. But the other part, the part that had long been silenced, craved adventure, passion, and the thrill of the unknown. In that moment, Julian reached out and took her hand, his touch sending sparks through her. "You have the power to choose, Emily. Don't let fear dictate your path." His words pierced through her hesitation, and she felt a rush of courage. What if she let go of her inhibitions, if only for a moment? What if she allowed herself to explore the edges of temptation, to taste the sweetness of freedom? Taking a deep breath, she made her choice. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "Let's explore." The air thickened with tension as Julian's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and elation crossing his features. He pulled her closer, their bodies almost touching, the world outside fading into a distant memory. In that moment, Emily felt alive, filled with a sense of exhilaration she had never experienced before. As the evening unfolded, Julian showed Emily the intimate side of his artistry, how he poured his soul onto the canvas, using colors to evoke emotions and challenge perceptions. They painted together, laughing and creating, each brushstroke a release of pent-up desire and creativity. The studio transformed into a sanctuary, a place where they could explore their passions without judgment. As the night wore on, Julian's presence enveloped her, and Emily felt herself surrendering to the moment. With every passing minute, her inhibitions melted away, replaced by a newfound confidence. The boundaries she had held onto for so long began to blur, and she found herself opening up in ways she had never imagined. Eventually, their laughter subsided, and a comfortable silence enveloped them. Emily found herself lost in Julian's gaze, an electric connection sparking between them. The world outside seemed to vanish, leaving only the two of them in that moment, suspended in time. "Emily," Julian said softly, breaking the spell, "you are a beautiful soul, and I can see the fire within you. Don't be afraid to let it shine." His words resonated deep within her, igniting the flames of desire she had suppressed for so long. As she stepped closer, she felt the undeniable pull between them, an intensity that was both thrilling and terrifying. "Julian," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before she could finish, Julian leaned in, capturing her lips with his own. The kiss was electric, a whirlwind of passion that swept her off her feet. Emily melted into him, surrendering to the heat of the moment. It felt like a release, a breaking of chains that had bound her for years. Time stood still as they kissed, lost in each other's embrace. The world outside faded away, and in that moment, all that mattered was the connection they shared. The kiss deepened, and Emily felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Her senses heightened as she explored the edges of temptation. But as quickly as it began, reality crashed back in, bringing with it the weight of her choices. Emily pulled away, her breath ragged. "What are we doing?" she gasped, the gravity of the moment dawning on her. "We're living," Julian replied, his voice slow and sincere, "embracing the desires that make us human." Emily's heart raced, torn between exhilaration and fear. She had crossed a line, stepped into a world that challenged everything she had ever known. But with that realization came a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she was allowing herself to be vulnerable, to explore her passions without restraint. "I shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "I have a life, responsibilities." "Responsibilities don't have to define you," Julian interjected gently. "You deserve to explore the depths of who you are, to embrace the wildness within you. Don't let fear hold you back." As she looked into his eyes, she could see the sincerity in his words. This was not just a fleeting moment. It was an invitation to discover herself, to break free from the chains of convention that had held her captive for so long. "Then let's do it," Emily said, surprising even herself with her boldness. "Let's explore this together." Julian's eyes lit up with excitement, and they spent the rest of the night lost in each other's company. They painted, talked, and shared their dreams and fears, slowly peeling back the layers of their lives. For Emily, it felt like a rebirth, a rediscovery of the person she had buried beneath expectations and obligations. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow over the studio, Emily knew she had crossed a threshold. The edges of her world had expanded, revealing possibilities she had never considered. But as the sun rose, reality began to seep in. She would have to face the consequences of her choices. The next few weeks passed in a blur of passion and self-discovery. Emily and Julian became inseparable, spending days exploring the city, painting, and delving into deep conversations about art and life. Emily's spirit flourished as she embraced her desires, and for the first time, she felt truly alive. But as their relationship deepened, the realities of Emily's life began to loom over her. She was still an accountant, still bound by her job and the expectations of her family and society. The thrill of her newfound freedom was intoxicating, but the weight of her responsibilities tugged at her heart. One evening, as they sat together in the studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases and the remnants of their passion, Emily felt a pang of anxiety. "Julian," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty, "what happens when the fun ends? What if I have to go back to my old life?" Julian's expression softened, his eyes searching hers. "You don't have to go back to that life unless you choose to. This is your journey, Emily. You have the power to redefine what your life looks like." "But what if I fail?" she whispered, the fear creeping back in. "What if I can't find the courage to leave everything behind?" Julian reached out, taking her hand in his. "You won't fail, Emily. You're stronger than you realize. Temptation isn't just about indulgence. It's about embracing your true self, facing your fears, and choosing your path." His words resonated with her, but the internal struggle continued. The temptation to fully embrace her new life clashed with the fear of losing everything she had built. As days turned into weeks, Emily found herself standing at a crossroads, torn between the security of her old life and the exhilarating freedom Julian offered. Then, one evening, Emily received a call from her boss, asking her to come in for a meeting. She sensed something was off, an underlying tension in her supervisor's voice. As she arrived at the office, her heart raced with apprehension. Sitting in the conference room, she listened as her boss laid out plans for a promotion, a significant opportunity that would come with more responsibility and expectations. It was the chance she had worked for her entire career, a validation of her hard work and dedication. But as she listened, the weight of the decision pressed down on her. "Emily, this is a great opportunity for you," her boss said, smiling. "We believe you're the right person for this role." But as her boss spoke, Emily felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. The promotion would mean longer hours, less time for herself, and a return to the routine she had begun to escape. She thought of Julian, of the passion they had shared, and the freedom she had found in his presence. After the meeting, she sat in her car, battling the conflicting emotions swirling within her. The temptation to accept the promotion tugged at her, offering security and validation. But the voice of her heart urged her to consider the path she had begun to carve with Julian. That evening, Emily met Julian at the studio, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. "I had a meeting today," she said, her voice trembling. "They offered me a promotion." Julian's expression shifted, a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. "That's incredible, Emily. You've worked hard for it." "Yes, but it feels wrong. It's not what I want anymore. I want to continue exploring this new life, but I'm scared of what that means." Julian stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "You have to follow your heart. The promotion is an opportunity, but it's not the only path. You can create a life that embraces both your passion and your responsibilities." Emily felt the weight of his words. She had spent so long conforming to expectations that she had lost sight of her own desires. The thought of stepping into a life that felt authentic was terrifying, yet exhilarating. "But what if I fail? What if I regret leaving my job behind?" "Failure is part of the journey," Julian replied, his voice steady. "But you won't regret living a life true to yourself. You have to be brave enough to take the leap." In that moment, Emily felt the familiar pull of temptation, the allure of freedom, and self-discovery. It was a defining moment, a choice between the safety of the known and the excitement of the unknown. As the days turned into weeks, Emily wrestled with her decision. She spent time painting, letting her emotions flow onto the canvas, channeling her fears and desires into her art. Each stroke became a reflection of her internal battle, a cathartic release that brought her closer to the truth she sought. Finally, one sunny afternoon, Emily found herself standing before her boss once more, ready to deliver her decision. The moment felt monumental, a culmination of her journey. "I appreciate the offer, but I have to decline," she said, her voice firm. Her boss looked taken aback, surprise etched on their face. "Emily, are you sure? This is a fantastic opportunity for your career." "I know," she replied, her heart racing. but I've realized that I need to follow my passion, to explore the edges of my own desires. I want to create a life that feels authentic to me. As she left the office, a rush of exhilaration surged through her. It was as if a weight had been lifted, and she felt lighter, freer. She had taken a leap into the unknown, embracing the temptation to live life on her own terms. In the weeks that followed, Emily immersed herself in her art, exploring new techniques and styles, and discovering a vibrant community of artists who shared her passion. She collaborated with Julian on projects, their bond deepening as they explored the depths of their creativity together. But with this newfound freedom came challenges. The uncertainty of her choices loomed over her like a shadow, whispering doubts that threatened to pull her back into fear. There were moments of self-doubt when she questioned her decision to leave behind the security of her job. One evening, while painting in the studio, Emily felt a wave of insecurity wash over her. "What if this doesn't work out?" she murmured, staring at the canvas filled with half-finished strokes. "What if I can't make a living as an artist?" Julian, who had been watching her from across the room, stepped closer. "You're allowed to feel uncertain, Emily, but remember why you chose this path. It's about embracing your passions, not just for the outcome, but for the joy of creating." His words resonated deeply, a reminder that the journey itself was just as important as the destination. "You're right," she said, her voice steadier. "I need to focus on the process, not just the result." As the months passed, Emily found herself evolving as an artist, her style becoming more distinct and expressive. She began to exhibit her work at local galleries, receiving praise and validation that fueled her passion. The community she had once feared entering welcomed her with open arms, and she forged connections with fellow artists who inspired her to push the boundaries of her creativity. But with each success came the inevitable comparisons and insecurities. Emily found herself grappling with the pressure of expectation once more. It was a delicate balance between ambition and self-acceptance, and the journey was far from linear. One evening, after a particularly challenging exhibit, Emily returned to the studio feeling defeated. "I just don't know if I can keep up with this," she confessed, her voice heavy with uncertainty. "What if I'm not good enough?" Julian stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "You are enough, Emily. Remember that your worth is not defined by the success or failure of any exhibit. It's about the joy of creation and the journey you're on." His unwavering belief in her stirred something deep within her, a reminder that art was about more than just accolades. It was a reflection of her soul, a means of expression that transcended societal expectations. Taking a deep breath, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Thank you, Julian," she said softly, a smile breaking through her doubts. "You always know how to lift me up." As they embraced, Emily felt a warmth spread through her, grounding her in the present moment. In that embrace, she knew she was not alone in her journey. Together, they faced the uncertainties of their lives, drawing strength from one another. As they continued to explore the edges of temptation, weeks turned into months, and Emily found herself thriving in her newfound balance between passion and responsibility. She was exhibiting her work, receiving recognition, and building connections within the art community, all while maintaining a sense of stability in her life. The fear of failure lingered, but she learned to navigate it with grace. But just as she began to feel a sense of security, life threw her another curveball. One morning, she received a call from her parents, asking her to come home for a family gathering. The weight of anxiety settled over her. Her parents were still grappling with her choices, and she braced herself for another conversation about the right path. As she drove home, her mind raced with conflicting emotions. She loved her family, but their expectations felt suffocating at times. Upon arriving, the familiar tension hung in the air as she stepped through the front door, greeted by her parents' concerned expressions. "Emily, we're worried about you," her mother said, her tone tinged with disappointment. "You left a stable job for this art thing. We just want what's best for you." Emily felt the familiar pang of guilt, but this time, She was determined to stand her ground. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm happy. I'm pursuing my passion and exploring who I am." Her father interjected, frustration etched on his face. "But what about your future? You need to think practically. This isn't a sustainable path." The conversation spiraled into an argument, old wounds resurfacing as Emily struggled to defend her choices. It felt like a familiar dance, a cycle of expectation and disappointment that had played out for years. Finally, in a moment of clarity, Emily took a deep breath. "I understand your concerns, but I can't live my life based on your expectations. I need to follow my heart, even if it leads me down an uncertain path." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Her parents exchanged glances, their disappointment palpable, but Emily stood firm in her conviction. She had come too far to let fear dictate her choices any longer. As she left her childhood home, a mixture of emotions swirled within her. She loved her family, but recognized the importance of prioritizing her own desires. The journey towards self-discovery was fraught with challenges, but she was ready to embrace the unknown. Back at the studio, Julian welcomed her with open arms. "How did it go?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "It was tough," Emily admitted, her voice trembling, "but I stood up for myself. I can't keep living for their expectations. I need to find my own way." Julian's eyes lit up with admiration. "That takes courage, Emily. You're embracing your truth, and that's what matters most." In the following weeks, Emily poured herself into her art, channeling her emotions into vibrant canvases that reflected her journey. With each brushstroke, she felt a sense of liberation, a release of the burdens she had carried for so long. As her confidence blossomed, she decided to host her own exhibit, a celebration of her journey, her passions, and her resilience. It was a daunting task, but Emily felt invigorated by the challenge. She wanted to share her story, to inspire others to embrace their own desires and confront their fears. The day of the exhibit arrived, and the studio buzzed with excitement. Friends, family, and fellow artists gathered to celebrate Emily's work. As she stood among her creations, she felt a surge of gratitude wash over her. This was her moment, a culmination of her journey, a testament to her growth. As the crowd mingled, Emily caught sight of Julian, who stood at the back, a proud smile on his face. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, she knew she had found a partner in both art and life. He had supported her through every challenge, encouraging her to embrace her true self. As the evening unfolded, Emily felt a sense of belonging and acceptance she had never experienced before. Her art resonated with those who viewed it, sparking conversations and connections that filled her heart with joy. In that space, she realized the power of vulnerability, the beauty that emerged when she chose to embrace her desires. Despite the fear and uncertainty, each piece told a story, a reflection of her journey through temptation, self-discovery, and resilience. As the night drew to a close, Emily stood before a large canvas that encapsulated her journey. It was a vibrant explosion of color, a visual representation of her transformation. The words "Embrace your fire" adorned the bottom, a reminder of the strength that lay within her. Surrounded by the warmth of love and support, Emily took a deep breath, feeling truly alive. She had stepped into her power, refusing to let fear dictate her choices. In that moment, she understood the beauty of temptation not just as a fleeting indulgence, but as a guiding force that had led her to embrace her authentic self. As she looked around at the faces of those who had supported her journey, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was just the beginning, an invitation to continue, exploring the edges of her desires, to paint her life with the vibrant colors of passion and authenticity. Emily knew she would face challenges ahead, but she was ready to confront them with courage and grace. Together with Julian, she would continue to create, to dream, and to embrace the beauty of living life on her own terms. The fire within her burned brighter than ever, illuminating the path ahead, a journey of endless possibilities and unapologetic self-discovery. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoy, then please like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel.